Welcome to my Unity sound effects demo. My name is Sabrina Foldi, and I'm going to show you some highlights on how I designed the sound effects for this beautiful 3D game kit and implemented them in Unity. The player, Ellen, has crash landed on a lovely alien planet, and so I designed the sounds to convey an exotic environment. First, I created an asset list to track everything I needed to create. I used sample libraries as well as my foley work, where I used my Tascam DR40 for the recordings. Then I cleaned the samples in Audacity and designed the sounds in Ableton. For the background sounds, I used animal sounds as well as wind to give the scene some depth and to match the plants swaying in the breeze. I attached some sounds to objects in the scene, like the fireflies, but I also placed some around the level, like the swamp sounds, and I set these up as 3D objects. I used C# script at times, where I created events to place in the animation in order to call the sounds at the exact time, like the eel dogs splashing. For objects like the door pads and the crystal switches, I added the sounds by modifying the existing scripts. So when Ellen approaches a crystal, we hear a loop. When she picks up the crystal, that loop stops and the crystal sound plays instead. For this, I used the interact on trigger script, which controls what happens when Ellen walks into that trigger area. I designed that crystal loop to sound like the individual lights are moving in a circle and each making a sound. So I made 3 layers of the same sample. I increased the pitch on each layer for nice harmony, and then I created fades so they would each rise and fall in volume independently, as if there's more than one sound source. For Ellen's voice, I used my own. But for the chompers, I wanted something unique for their amphibious, hippo, dog-like qualities. So I used samples from a hippo, as well as a sea lion, raven, lion, and a pig, and added bubbly underwater sounds. I then used a flanger on each of the animal tracks and EQ'd everything to sit properly in the mix. Ellen's footsteps are implemented across a few different ground types: grass, swamp, and stone. For her footsteps on grass, I walked in a layer of cassette tape between 2 towels, just to avoid too much crunch. For the swampy surface, I stepped on layers of dry and wet towels, so I could get earthy sounds as well as wet ones. For stone, I used my tile entranceway. In Unity, her footstep sounds are referenced by a random audio player script, which defaults to her footsteps on grass. And then there are overrides for different ground types. So as a ground type is detected, the correct footstep plays. I wanted the grenadier to sound large and heavy, and like he's a combo of computerized and hydraulic things. So I recorded the opening and closing of metal drawers and used samples of things falling on metal, as well as the sound of gears, bolts, hydraulics, and servos. Then I added a kick drum to give the footstep more weight. In Unity, I created one audio player for his right footsteps and one for his left. Each contain an array of sounds. Then in the Grenadier behavior script, I created a new function, which I called playstep. This receives a string, and if it's left, then a sound from the footstep left player is heard. Otherwise, a sound from the right one is heard. In his animations, I made events to reference that playstep function. And that's where I sent the string to the function, either right or left. So we have his footstep sounds playing in sync with his animation, and we have some nice randomness in those sounds. For the Grenadier's grenade, punch, and shield, I wanted a lot of detail in the sound design. So when he creates the grenade and then throws it, I used samples of a sci-fi weapon charging up. Then when the grenade explodes, I designed the sound in 4 layers. I used distorted kicks and impact sounds to get a synth type of hit. Then I had a layer of explosion samples, and then 2 layers of crackly samples. The Grenadier's death is something I approached similarly to his weapon design. The layers within the sounds were triggered randomly in the animation. For the staff, I used the same bass and synth sounds from the Grenadier's grenade. I wanted Ellen's staff to sound similar to that, as though they're made of the same technology. For the chomper's bite, we hear his voice and the snap of his jaw. I used my own foley work for this, hitting fork tines together, and then I designed that to sound like multiple teeth. Then I layered that with the raven sample, a crunch, and a sample of a fleshy hit. Using the audio mixer, I created submixes and removed some of the really low end from the mix. For debugging, I used the profiler, where I could see which objects are being referenced and to make sure my sounds are being triggered properly. I hope you enjoyed my Unity sound effects demo. My name is Sabrina Foldi. Thanks for watching.